At this point in time, it has become almost a joke within the watch community about how many limited edition or special edition watches Seiko and Grand Seiko release. There are of course arguments for and against this practice, and it's an interesting discussion to have. This video will be part discussion and part review, because I have one such watch here to show you. Welcome to Addicted to Watches. Today, we have a limited edition watch from Seiko that really exemplifies the discussion surrounding the issue of all of Seiko's limited edition watches. It's one that was released 4 years ago in 2020, but I've managed to find myself one brand new in the box. It comes in a color that was very on trend at the time. This is the Seiko Cocktail Time SARY169. Also known as the Tequila Sunset, this watch gets its name from its pink, sunset-colored dial, and the fact that it, like my blue Starlight, is based on and named after a cocktail. Released at the same time was the Frozen Margarita, which features a light blue-colored dial too. The one I have here is part of the Japanese release, so has the model number SARY169, but there was also the international release with the number SRPE47J. On release, this one had a retail price, as you can see from the tag, of 71,500 Japanese yen, which converts at the moment to a little under $500 US. That price is pretty much on par for a lot of these Seiko Cocktail Time limited edition watches. Which brings us to that point of discussion. When you get to a point where you can say, on par for Cocktail Time limited edition watches, you might just have too many limited edition Cocktail Time watches. As it stands, I happen to have 4 different ones in the house at the moment. My Starlight with the blue dial, Matcha with the green dial, this Tequila Sunset with pink dial, and one you haven't seen just yet, but keep an eye out for a future video. All that to say, Seiko have released a lot. I can count 11 off the top of my head, and that's excluding other Presage models. This begs the question, where should we, or Seiko, draw the line? There are 2 perspectives to look at this from. First up, if everything is limited, then nothing is limited. It's the old saying, isn't it? But the oversaturation of limited edition watches, where almost every second one is limited, can really take the shine off them. If that's something you care about, that is. By having so many, so often, and in such numbers that they're still readily available in new condition years after release, you really begin to devalue the idea of a limited or special edition. Maybe not so special anymore. You could also say that for a few of these, it's just reuse of the same dial texture in different colors, and that speaks to a lack of originality, imagination, or inspiration. With these limited edition watches, when they were first being released, they were really brand new dial textures and layouts, but as time went by, Seiko just reused them again and again. If Seiko want to release more limited edition watches, I'm all for it. Just please try a few more new things, not just colors. If we look at them in a more positive way, more editions of these watches allows more people to have greater access to interesting dials like these here. Truly limited edition watches often sell out very quickly and become rare even on the second-hand market. One example you can look at is the Ginza Alpinist. By releasing more variations of these special dials, Seiko gives collectors more opportunities to find a watch available in a color they like. Additionally, these limited edition watches let Seiko be a bit more adventurous when it comes to dial textures, colors, or styles, where they might tend to be more conservative and mass appealing with their mainline watches. Taking risks and trying new things is exactly what brands should be doing to propel themselves forwards in the minds and wallets of collectors looking for something that stands out in a very crowded marketplace. Whichever side of the fence you're on, it seems like Seiko's practice of limited edition after limited edition isn't going anywhere fast, so you might as well get used to it and enjoy it for what it is. Personally, I don't really have much of a problem with them. Whether a watch is limited isn't really a factor I take into consideration when I'm looking at a watch. I usually look first for a dial design or texture that really appeals to me, and a lot of Seiko's limited editions happen to have very cool textures and dials. That brings us back to this one in front of us, one of these limited editions. In terms of the watch itself, it's actually very similar to my Matcha Presage, so I won't spend too long on it. However, like that watch, the packaging of this one is actually quite nice. I usually don't care much about a box that the watch comes in, since it will just end up in a cupboard, but the presentation of this one was quite nice. Inside is this brown felt lining, and the watch as well as its additional strap, which is displayed quite nicely. As you can see, it comes with both a mesh strap fitted to the watch, as well as a brown leather one with deployed buckle in the box. There isn't much else in the box though, no cocktail recipe like the one that came with my Starlight. I still haven't decided if I'll take the stickers off of this one and wear it, so this part of the review will be looking through the plastic. To be honest, I was a little disappointed with the colour in person. This might sound silly, but it's very pink. I was hoping for a slightly more pale tone, or even a shade with a little more orange, but this one is more or less straight pink, and I haven't quite gelled with it yet. Ignoring how I feel though, it is a nice, well executed dial. The colour has a slight fumé effect, becoming more vibrant and saturated towards the outer edges. In the centre of the dial, the colour is much lighter and a bit more subtle. It makes it feel almost natural and tricks your eye into thinking there is more depth than there actually is. That feeling of depth is definitely helped by the dial texture. It's a spiraling diamond pattern that expands as it radiates out from the centre. A friend described it as dragon scales, and I can really see where he'd get that impression. It's a texture used on some models from the regular Presage line, and while it is detailed and intricate, which I usually like, I'm not sold on this one. The layout of the dial furniture is pretty much the same as my Matcha though, with applied hour markers. Evens have numerals, whereas odds just have tapering rectangular indices. Again at 3 we have a date, since this watch uses a 4R35 movement, and the Seiko logo above the pinion is applied, while the words Presage and Automatic are simply printed underneath. Where this watch does also differ from my Matcha is that the hour markers and the hands are in a darker gunmetal grey, which is almost black, rather than the usual silver. I can see why Seiko went with this choice, as it does improve legibility and really helps them to stand out against the dial. But I didn't actually realise this was the case before I bought the watch, and like the colour of the dial, I'm not sure how I feel about it. When it comes to the case, it's exactly the same as my other Matcha limited edition. In terms of size, the case is 38.5mm, which I think is a very nice size for a dress watch. It's got presence, especially with that dial, but not too much. Height is manageable at 12.5mm, especially considering the box-domed crystal that sticks out from the case quite a bit. Lug to lug is quite compact at 45.1mm, which makes the watch very wearable on a wide range of wrist sizes. The width between those lugs is a standard 20mm thankfully, though you do have 2 straps straight out of the box to play with already. The finishing around the case is pretty straightforward. It's all polished. We've got a slim polished bezel surrounding the dial and crystal, flat case sides, and pretty straight lugs. The crown is signed and a little on the small side, but forgivable for a dress watch like this. When it comes to dress watches, a smaller crown visually looks better than a big, chunky one, even if the latter is more practical. Turning the watch over, and we're presented with a view in at the movement thanks to the display caseback. Seiko have put a gold rotor on this one to jazz up the otherwise simple but reliable 4R35 movement. If you haven't heard by now, it hacks, hand winds, goes for about 40 hours, and beats 6 times per second. It's also got a date complication for good measure. While I won't be changing out the straps, I'll put it on wrist like this to give you an idea of how it wears on a 7-inch or 18cm wrist. I think the size works very well, and it's not any bigger than it needs to be. The texture of the dial combined with the slight sunburst effect really works well to catch and play with the light, as does the polishing on the bezel around it. I really like the way my Matcha Presage wears, and this wears exactly the same way. You'll have to use your imagination for how it wears on the included brown leather strap. So, I've still got the stickers on this one. I will admit that compared to my other Presage cocktail times, this one didn't wow me out of the box like they did. I don't know if that comes down to the fact that this is my first experience with a pink or salmon coloured watch, or if it was that the dial texture is just not doing it for me. It's not a bad looking watch by any means, but maybe just not the watch for me. Besides, I don't know if I have room in the collection for another limited edition cocktail time watch. And if I do, surely there's another new one bound to be released soon. What do you think about this watch? Do you have a limited edition Seiko in your collection? Which side of the fence do you sit on? Should I peel the stickers and give this one a proper go? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.